So I thought I'd make a video on how I'm doing these shoreline effects, but it's not just shoreline. I put any object in there. And it has foam around it. See it a bit better there. The blue stuff around it is because I'm using a particular refraction method, and it's not that good, to be honest. I've got to fix it. But in this video, I'm just concentrating on the shoreline stuff. So first, there's two effects we want to achieve. One of them is interacting with the terrain, and the second one is interacting with objects, whether they be static or dynamic. This technique does work without distance fields, sort of, but it's best to have distance fields on. To achieve this, we're going to use three different methods. I've never had any luck with, and this pixelation business is also a result of not a good height map, so that's not an indication of what you'll necessarily achieve. Yeah, I've never had any luck using distance fields and landscape. I think they work now, but they're still fairly low resolution, and you just don't get the kind of control you want from them. So I'll show you how I did this. It's similar to the community ocean project. So the base ocean I've got here is the physical water shader on the marketplace, and then I've butchered the hell out of it to get here. I've converted it to C++ and material parameters, so I don't have to worry about much of this. And then I've combined it with the height map of the terrain to make it so that there's the main wave displacement kind of falls off by the time it gets to the shore. So I'll just go over what I've done with the height map stuff, and I'll just put on my test material. It says foam test, it's basically whatever I'm testing at the time. So I've got made a material function called ocean foam, which handles all of it. You pipe in your colour, roughness and so on, and it filters it all in that function and outputs the final result. So if we go into that and have a look, what's going to make this easiest? So I've got three different techniques here. Now the first one is height map. This ocean shallows deals with that, I believe. So I've got my material parameter collection determining what the height map size is and the offset. And then I pipe that in. So I've got two I can use. I've got the zoomed height map and the regular height map. Because my map is actually a tiny island sitting within a 16-kilometre area, I just use a zoomed in one and just made a second set of parameters to control that. Otherwise, if I use an 8K or 16K height map as a texture, it's going to downscale it to 4K. By the time it's just around the island, it'll be like 1 pixel per 10 meters or something. So I zoomed it in as far as I could, and so I'll show you. Okay. So the clamped. I also, rather than using the full range of the height map, which in my case again is a bit extreme, it's 4 kilometres or so. I actually just crunched it down in Photoshop, so it was just a small range around the island. I'll just show you that. It's very old. That can't be right. Alright, so this is my base height map. So you can see most of the detail is in the outer edges of it. The island itself, you can barely distinguish. So to even isolate that, if I use the threshold tool, you can sort of see it come in there. But it's only these that very top, where you only just see it. So to import that into Unreal, even at 16-bit, you're going to get major stepping. So it just won't work. So what I had to do was make this version, which is just using levels to clamp off that, just the bit I need. So I get enough of a gradient, and you can see I was actually able to push it down to 128. If you have more detail, you may need to increase it. So once that's in there, and I got the UVs sorted out through the material parameter collection and just using the world position to derive UVs. Which you should see here. So that's it there. That's just the height map mapped on it. And that result there is pretty much what I use to say, well, as it gets wider, the main big waves should fall off. And that's what they do in the Community Ocean project as well. So once I had that, I did a whole bunch of stuff to it. So I derived a direction off it as well, which didn't actually work out, so I won't bother showing you that. So what did I do? So the direction I pretty much use as a UV, because the gradient I just put in the Y and then the X. I think I just left it as a constant. I couldn't work out how to get it to do sort of tiling, wrapping around the border. And I add a bit of noise to that, so you get a bit of distortion. So I'll show you what that looks like. So it's actually, it's flipped the other way, and I don't remember why I did that, but yeah. So that's the raw direction that I got from the height map, and that was through that's just the raw height map. So what you saw before, I'd actually done a smooth step on it to get more of or less of a fall off, whereas this one's very smooth. You can see here the resolution falls apart a bit, but for my purposes it looks fine. Then we add the noise, and this is going to be a two-step process because for whatever reason, if you compile a material function, it kills the material it's referenced in. So we're not really seeing anything there. Multiply that by an arbitrary value just so it tiles. So you can see it's multiplied, that's why it's so much lighter. If I actually stuck that through a modulus, you could see the tiling, but it's not really necessary. Then stick that in the panner. That really doesn't show anything apparently. And then that is used as the UVs for this texture. And if I could work out the X, it'd be tiled, because the texture, I was originally gonna have it tile, so it was like actual waves. Then I just had a bunch of different variations in there. So I had the main one that I was going to use for displacement, and then just the peaks, and a different variation of that. Then matching normals, and this was just done in Substance Designer. Then multiplied that because it was a bit much, added the sharper peaks, and this is the purpose of this is just the foam mask, so more multiplication, and then pipe some noise into it. Which breaks it up a bit. Again, it's another thing that kind of starts to fall apart with the resolution, because I've made that texture as low resolution as I can. But in the combination of noises there, one of them's really big, which is why you're seeing this blockiness. But again, it worked. And then the almost final step is just adding back in the gradient, so you're not getting the waves everywhere. They gradually fade into the shore. And then that goes through a final smooth step. And those are my waves for the shoreline. As I said, if we could get the red tiling working, it'd probably look a lot better. So basically, what you can do here is, for any gradient you feed it, you can get this wave effect. You just need a bit of noise breakup and a panner. So the second element, that's the waves. The second element is a simple depth fade, and this will suffice if you're not using distance fields. It doesn't look as good because, yeah, there are downsides to it. I'll show you. So you get this, which shows off the stepping in this height map again. Really exacerbates it. Now, where did I put that ball? You can see it works around this, but the downside of this depth fade is it doesn't spread out spatially. You only get it where the object overlaps with the water. So this is sort of good for where it exactly touches stuff, but that's about it. So this final element is using a distance field. And I don't know what this business is, but it doesn't seem to affect it once the whole graph compiles, so whatever. And then I combine the distance field. What you could actually do is, if you want to use a distance field as the waves, you just use this as the input. Basically, you make a constant 1 for the x, and you use the gradient as the y, feed it into a multiplier, feed that into a panner, and then feed that into your texture to make it scroll. And then you'll need to break it up with noise. So I combine those two together, then put it into a power, so it has a bit more of a fall off. Then I added the wave effect. Then I used that to mask out the foam. Which gives me this. So the foam isn't too fancy. Like, there's a lot of things I want to do to improve this, but this is just the basics. I did come up with a fairly good method of doing noise that looks to me a lot better than the regular was it motion chaos? So I've actually got it here. So that's it for the waves. So there's two basic elements to that. There's masking out the foam, and there is adding to the height map. So that was it. Now this variation. Oh, there's a really big one. So that's it there. So you get there's a bit of distortion, it kind of boils around. So the way I did that is, I've got this base variation map which makes use of all 4 channels to just have different noises. And that compression is really horrific. So that's your basic Perlian clouds. This is all done in Substance Designer. More cellular clouds, and then a grittier noise. So what I'm doing for that is I am using motion chaos, so basically it's well positioned, projected. I'm mixing 2 noises at all times, so I'm using a division 1 and division 2 for the 2 different sizes. That should actually be multiplier anyway. I'm using a multiplier here instead of divide because it's faster. Feeding that into motion chaos, doing a power on it because the base result I was getting was the too many whites. Then turning that into a UV basically, putting that into another motion chaos and feeding that as a UV to the second texture, and then the outputs are the first texture, the second texture, and a result of the 2. So through doing the UV distortion you kind of get this boiling, and just looks a bit better than the standard motion chaos. I'm sure I pay for it with instructions. So it's 84 instructions. And the final ocean, which is by no means perfect, as you saw that fraction before. Okay, that won't tell me. How about that? the total instructions for that is 2329 instructions. So it's quite heavy. Vertex shader is 137. And my FPS is okay. Say 50. Don't know how much of that is the ocean shader though. Okay, it's hitting 60 without the ocean shader. So yeah, probably got a bit of optimizing to do. But anyway, it's not final. And that's it.